So I haven't worked out, like really worked out in 3 weeks, and I feel like the incredible shrinking man. I was getting all buff, but that's nothing compared to Josh. What were you doing? It's like you're looking a little uncomfortable right now. You're looking a little
So,
uncomfortable.
so all three of us, how we always talk about. It's like, hey, for folks, for men our age, the average male in America, the three of us, we're fairly fit. I can still go out and rep out pull ups and push ups and stuff. I'm not, obviously I'm not running 2 miles in 14 minutes or 13 and a half minutes anymore. But so anyway, so yesterday I get up, yesterday morning, knock out some exercise, and then around 9 o'clock I knock out the yard, right, mowing and trimming and blowing off the driveway and the porch and everything. And so after a little while, after you don't ever make the mistake of going and taking a shower like right after you're done, because you're going to get out of the shower and you're just going to keep sweating. So wait a little while, hang out, and drink some water and kind of poke around. And so I go and take my shower and get dressed. And I was like, all right, man, throw on some socks, because we were getting ready to head out. And dude, I sat down on the side of my tub to put on my socks. I got one sock on and I'm putting the other sock on. And all of a sudden it felt like I had, like Leonidas had shoved a spear into my lower back. And I was like, oh my God, like what is happening? Like
So
that shit seized up.
just to recap, you were sitting on the okay, because I imagined you sitting on the bed, but
No.
this is even better. You're sitting on the side of the tub, putting on
Yeah.
socks.
Yeah. I was like putting on socks, and all of a sudden, dude, it just like, and you're like, because I'm balancing a little bit, and I like, just like twist. Just, I do like a quarter turn, not even a quarter turn of my torso, and it's just like, geek, and I
Did
just
you make a
seized up.
noise? Did you make a noise?
Yeah, I made a noise.
What did it sound like?
Dude, it was like, it was like, so it's like, you, your dogs have squeaker toys.
Yes.
That's what, you ever step on them? You ever like step on them inadvertently? You're walking through the house like early in the morning, something like that. It's like beep. You're oh, like that's what it was. Like I squeaked and I was like, oh, it was like a squeak and a grunt. It was the most ridiculous thing. It's like not my finest moment. And
I'd give anything to see that.
so
To see it.
sitting there, and so
That's
dude, so it gets better, right? So I was like, ooh, man, that like wow, that is not good. We've all been hurt before and we've all been injured. And the difference, right? You're like, oh, I'm hurt. And there's times you're like, no, dude, I'm legit injured. I was like, oh man, I might be legit injured. So I was like, I need to lay flat for a minute on something hard. So I just kind of like slide off, the side of the tub, like gingerly, like down to the bathroom floor, and I'm laying there. And then I start thinking, right? Everything is going through my mind. I'm like thinking, the first thought is, I can't believe I'm this weak. I was like, I can't believe I'm this weak. Here I am. I was like, I'm a barrel chested, steely eyed, like, and I'm laying on my bathroom floor because I hurt my back putting on my socks. It's like, this is terrible. Like, I can't go like this. Like, I just can't.
Did the
It was
dogs
like,
come up? Did they see you on the floor?
no, dude, my dog, he was downstairs sleeping somewhere.
That's what always
Something
happens,
he
dude. I
didn't
end up
care about
laying on
me.
the floor for that firm surface. And then it's like my dogs know. It's like, oh, they come
Yeah.
up, try to lick you in the face.
They're
And
like,
it's
look at this old bastard right here. It reminded me of, so you guys remember back in the Iraq days, in the heyday, it was generally like, like 6:30, 7 o'clock every morning, you get your Katusha rockets and your indirect wake up call. And, 9 times out of 10, I generally just kind of like rolled over and went back to sleep, when that happened. And so there was one time that I heard them. And, I was laying in my chew and everything, and heard him. Was like, okay, it's, it's about that time. And so I kind of rolled over and went back to sleep. And, but it kept going. And then it kept getting louder. And I was like, man, okay. The nearest, the nearest bunker is like maybe 100 meters, maybe 150 meters from my chew. And I was like, I saw somebody get hit. Dude, so on one of my rotations, I saw somebody get hit running to a bunker. And so after that, I was like, I'm never moving. Like I'm just not going to move. Like it's like I'm going to stay right where I'm at. It'll be over in a few minutes, and you go on about your day and do whatever. And well, it started getting closer and closer, and it got close enough that round exploded, and it shattered it basically showered my chew with gravel. That's how close it was. And I was like, oh, okay, now you got my attention. Right now, now I'm awake. I'm fully awake now. Well, I was zipped up in my sleeping bag, right? That 3-piece sleeping bag, the black green, with I had that, and I was zipped up in that, and so I was like, well, I'm not gonna get up. I heard my neighbors, scrambling out their doors, and they're running, for the bunker. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. It's like I'm let me just get out my sleeping bag, and I'm basically just gonna put my pillow over my head and go back to sleep. And so I'm trying to get out of my sleeping bag, but the zipper's stuck. And so I start fighting with the zipper, and now another round goes off, and it's super close. Like it hit 2 chews away from me. It completely demolished that chew. And by this point, like I'm thinking, like this might be it. Like this might be the one. And so I'm trying to get out my sleeping bag, and I just start like thinking like, not like this, not like this. Come on, I can't go like this. Not stuck in my sleeping bag. And so it kind of reminded me as I'm laying on the floor yesterday, after hurting my back, put it on my socks, I was like, not like this. I can't,
You
not,
know,
not like this. It
that
was
would have been a
terrible.
great story for like a book of short stories about, that would have been great.
You
I
guys
wish you
should
would have
write
thought of
one.
that. Yeah. That reminds me of what happened to Sean B, Seamus.
Yeah.
What happened? He was, I don't know if you guys were ever in Mosul, but we had a chew right outside the jock or whatever we called it, talk. I don't know. And he woke up. He thought he heard a bang, like like it was like more like a baseball bat hitting the side of the chew. He's like, oh, somebody's screwing around or something, or maybe a vehicle backed into my chew. He gets up, and I think the way I remember the story is dude. So they came banging on his door, and an RPG had like hit right next to his chew and not detonated.
Oh,
And they
wow.
had to bring in EOD and everything to clear that thing out. And he slept there with like an RPG probably like 6 feet from his head, slept for like 3 hours. It's just,
Holy
dude, when it's
moly.
your time, it's your time. Like you said, you saw somebody get hit run into a bunker. I never saw that, but my logic was, dude, these are not, precision. It's indirect fire. So it's like, dude, I'd be safer in a bunker, but why am I going to expose myself like out in the
Ex-
open for 100 meters or whatever it is? I think I got in a bunker twice,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
out of what 2 dozen times, more.
Yeah.
But whatever. Roger, did that ever happen to you?
What's crazy is I mean, we just like everybody else, you take rockets all the time. So I mean, out in Salerno, I mean, it was just a daily event. But what's crazy is, day one, especially that first night, you're all like uppity and jittery and everything, incoming, outgoing, bunker, bunker, bunker. Everybody's, dude, by like week 2, it's crazy at 2 a.m. how you know the difference between outgoing and incoming. You hear it, you're like, oh, that's outgoing. I'm good. I'm going back to sleep. And then kind of like Josh, it's like you'll hear some incoming, like, that was probably about 300. Or no, I heard the whistle. We're good to go. That went over the camp or whatever. It's like, we're good to go. Whatever. But it kind of like you, I mean, they had the bunkers, but it's like, hey, dude, if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And I'm a firm believer, kind of like with some other places in the past, like Benghazi and this and that, like they already know where all that stuff is scoped out. So if there's any type of precision, that's the first place they're going to hit. So, but I mean, we know a lot of these poos or point of origins, how they launch them. There's no math to that thing. It's like, hey, Americans are that way, and point this thing and fire it off, and wherever it hits, it hits. So,
Yeah. Especially after, most places started getting the that Q-36 counter battery radar.
yeah.
They locked that poo in within seconds, and you had counter battery fire going out. Yeah, it was crazy, but
This
yeah, but that
this
was
this is how cowboy it was in Afghanistan. I'd been there a couple times before, but the ISAF commander decided that the best people to go try to find the point of origin before they had the vectoring stuff was to send the CI Human team out and try to find a point of origin. And we were like, yeah, man, let's go. This was before
Hell
AWG.
yeah.
This was before AWG. So we came up with a system. We'd find the impact and, you know, we didn't know what we were doing, you know, but we figured out a system. We were getting hit so many times that we'd go out and find roughly the point of origin. Like probably 3 times out of 5, we'd find it. And those guys have beat feet. The ISAF commander just want to know where it came from. You know, we weren't going out there to kill anybody. We just, you know, want to know where it came from. But dude, TRADOC came down to ISAF and talked to us for a long time. And well, they talked to us for about a week, not just about that, but about stuff we were doing. And, you know, AWG was created kind of shortly after that.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that AWG did before those systems came along. Yeah, it was some cowboy stuff. I'm lucky to be alive, man. The stuff we were doing in Afghanistan was dumb. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was dumb, man. It was so dumb. We drove by a truck. We were just way outside, in between Jalalabad and Kabul. And we were not screwing around, but we were, you know, we had something to do. But after we got done doing it, we were kind of just, you know, we found some AKs and we were shooting off those AKs, you know, seeing if they'd work. We're just driving down this road and a truck full of Taliban drives right by us. And we basically just waved at each other. We were so shocked to see each other out in the middle of nowhere. Their engagement wasn't even on anyone's mind. It was like, oh shit. I mean, these guys were Talibaned up, man. They were in the back of one of those Toyotas, you know, and just, we were so shocked.
Well, the times
nobody had
changed
pulled
too,
out the
you
weapon.
know.
We just kept going.
When you
I
look
love
at
it.
like the early years when we were there, I mean, I think you get away with a lot more of that because I just look at the different rotations and even because our numbers were so great early on, it's like we almost had more freedom of movement because they're like, okay, like, hey, strategically, even with the Taliban, right? Like they're just not going to just like randomly, you know, schwack some. It's like, hey, you have to have, you know, some method to the madness. And then once we started drawing down, like with the last tour, dude, you couldn't go anywhere. I mean, I remember the first one, I was able to walk off the fob. You know, there's a bread shop out there and a goat herder and this and that, and you kind of dick around a little bit or whatever. But dude, by the last tour, it's like, yeah, you're not leaving the fob unless you're convoyed up and you're rolling out with, you know, 8 MRAP and all that other stuff.
That's a good point, because if that same thing would have happened because that was what, 2005, I think, 2004, what I just described. If that would have happened in 2017, there'd have been a firefight.
Yeah, you'd have been dead.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Those guys were, well, yeah, you're right. Because, yeah,
just numbers, right?
Yeah, because they did have more folks than we did.
Yeah. I don't know. There was definitely, we definitely did a lot of dumb things. I think one of the, I don't know if it was the dumbest thing I did. Maybe, not the dumbest thing I did, but not smart. Rode a four wheeler down Highway 1 in Afghanistan. Because
obviously soft skin 4-wheeler.
yeah. I'm talking about like, you know, Bubba's, you know, 4-wheeler that he takes.
But what if they hit me in the face? It's a risk we were willing to take.
That's right. It was so we needed to get somewhere and do some stuff, and there weren't enough seats. You know, I think we were going with the PRT to you know, they were going to hand out rice and flip flops or something, and we needed to go, and there wasn't enough seats, and was like, well, we got a 4-wheeler, and the PRT commander, he was a white side SEAL, and you know, he just kind of like looked at us. He was like, hey man, if you guys are good with it, I'm good with it. And we were like, okay, we're good with it. We may have not been completely honest on the risk assessment, you know, that we our cutoff that we pushed up. But here it is, you know. It's funny because, you know, we're sitting there, we're getting ready to bust the gate, and you know, there's, you know, probably 4 or 5 MRAPs, and then there's us. There's, you know, me on the back, and then an 18 series guy driving this you know, this quad, and you know, these people are walking by, you know, and they're like, oh man, that's badass, you guys are gonna go get some, blah blah blah. And you know, we're just kind of like smiling, laughing at him, and walking off, and he looks back at me and he's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, well, I said, look at it this way. I was like, if we get hit with an IED, it's gonna be quick. I said, we're not even gonna know it, so we're all good, you know. And I'm pretty sure we were, going down Highway 1, passing, cars and people on the side of the road. They were probably looking at that and they were probably like, "Don't mess with that, dude. That's a trap. That right there, like
He's
that's a
crazy,
trap."
loco.
Yeah, yeah, loco gringos. They were like, "Yeah, dude, don't mess with that.
I
That's a
could see
trap."
Another
Josh on his four wheeler, akimbo style, with his Glocks. Like, God.
that's gray man. That's gray man AF, man.
It
Yet
was,
another good story for the book. There is a good story in
I'm
the
telling you, man, you guys
great
should
book.
put one out.
There's a
A whole bunch
great
of
book
stories
by
and stuff from
AJ
the fellas.
Todd and Bucky Calhoun called Snafus, Foo Bars, Tarfus, and Other Sordid Tales, where you may read stories like you've been hearing so far. There's some pretty dumb stuff we did back in the day, did or saw.
it was, when you think about it though, you especially you look back on it, and you're like, man, the things that I did and I lived through, things that I did were, it should not have turned out well. Like it should not have turned out the way it turned out. You're like, I'm actually really lucky. Um, you know, I tell you, the only time probably in all my travels, the one time that I was legit like, oh shit, like this has the potential to be very, very bad. Cause most times, if you're out and you get into a tick, your training takes over, right? You're just like, okay. And you generally have, a number of, of mates there. They have big guns too. And, you know, you have Apaches and A10s and everything that you can call, you have a lot of things at your disposal. But I did include that story in the book, was when I got left on an objective by myself in Mosul. Like that was the one time. That was the one time where I was like, "Oh shit!"
Oh God.
Like this, like it's like I was thinking Nick Berg, orange jumpsuit, like YouTube, like all bad.
Not
Like that
like
was the one
this.
time. Yeah, not like this, not like this. And I'm thinking about what had happened, everything, and then now I picture myself laying on my bathroom floor because I hurt my back. Like to bring it full circle, I was like, and now this, and now this. I was just like, oh, how the mighty have fallen. How the mighty.
So
By the way, have you
speaking of
guys
back,
seen?
go ahead.
Hang on, have you guys seen CT Fletcher lately?
No,
Like a
No.
picture of him, dude. You got to
No.
Google that stuff. So he had like a heart transplant in 2017. Different dude, man. Different dude. Guy's got to weigh like 140 pounds. Foot's all swollen because of anti-reject. Like he'd been all over YouTube. They still play some of the old YouTube videos, whatever. I watched. He's got a video out now called like "The Last Will and Testament" somebody produced. I think they produced it in like the last 2 years. It's not even the same guy. Like when I thought it was clickbait when I first saw the image of it. I was like, oh, this is clearly clickbait to get me to click on CT Fletcher, whatever you click on it. No, it's him. And it's about 11, 12 minutes long. Incredible. And oh, by the way, I don't care what he says. That dude was on roids. I'm just letting you know that.
Oh yeah, him and Liver King. You guys seen the Liver King?
No.
Oh my God! So Liver King is this new YouTube star or TikTok, whatever he is, and he's all about you got to eat organ meat. That's his thing. You got to eat organ meat, and this dude does feats of strength that are it's freakish. And man, yeah, look up Liver King. This guy, and he swears all he eats is liver, testicles, heart. He said he credits that to his physique, bro. And he says, no, I don't use steroids. No, that guy is on the juice. You cannot look like that. You looking him up, Josh? You can't look like that dude.
Oh yeah, he's pretty cut up,
dude.
And he's old. I mean, these people are old.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they were like older than us. Like we get to the point where when I was reading about CT Fletcher and they were talking about, I guess he was on the Joe Rogan show years ago, and he admitted early on in his career he was on steroids, and then he since got off, and it's all natural, whatever. And then they had this guy who was critiquing his interview and his workouts, and then the guy's like a nutritionist and stuff. He's like, basically, you have to look up natural bodybuilding, like true natural bodybuilding competitions where they test once a week and this and that, and they show pictures. Like this is outside of just the genetic freak. This is about as big as you can get. And you see these dudes. I mean, dude, he was like, you figure he had his heart transplant when he was like, what, 60 years old? And that dude's like 270 and yoked. And dude, I'm struggling as it is at 46.
Yeah. But, I mean, here's the other thing, CT Fletcher, and I'm not saying he wasn't on steroids, anything like that, but like that's his job though. Like for a long time, that was his job to go to the gym every day. So CT's, I mean, his job every day is to go to the gym. If my job was to go to the gym every day and I basically, lived in the gym, I'd probably be pretty yoked,
Well, that's
as
like
well.
Chris Hemsworth or Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They get the news that they're going to do it. I think we might have talked about this before early on, but they get the news, a year, 6 months out. Hey, you're going to be filming about 4 scenes where your shirt is off. So we're going to film all of those on the same day, and it's going to be, this time 8 months from now. Dude, you get in shape literally. It's like I think Robert Downey Jr. said it. You work out for 6 months to look good for 6 minutes. And yeah, so Chris Hemsworth, he's kind of a freak of nature anyway. But like these Brad Pitts and guys who aren't yoked normally, they have all that time. Nutritionists, physical therapists. The nutritionist is the big piece. Oh,
Yeah.
But I think
they're
he
also
looks fit. Like when you look Brad Pitt, he got fit. These guys here, we're talking about the CT Fletcher. Those are yoked.
yeah.
Okay, there's a
But
difference
even
between like
but
I'm
even
in
those
shape.
Hollywood
By the
stars,
way,
even
But
those Hollywood stars are jabbing oil into their butt, man. I mean, why would
oh
you
yeah,
not do that? Why would you not do that? We're
yeah,
not talking about sports, even playing field. There's no cheating when it comes to taking your shirt off in front of the camera. That's hey man, all is fair when it comes to that. But I wish these guys, CT Fletcher, you said he admitted it early on in his career. But like Liver King and all these people, no, man, this is all natural. Dude, just admit it. Just admit what you're doing. I like the way Joe Rogan handles it. He tells the whole world everything he does, and that includes testosterone therapy. And he's like,
yeah,
yeah, this is what I do, and this is how you do it, and this is, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I just admit it, man. Don't be like Lance Armstrong.
yeah. Or Barry. The you know, it's CT. CT Fletcher. Yeah, because I saw him and because he always talks about how he had emergency open heart surgery. He flatlined on the table 3 times during surgery and everything. And yeah, once you saw him after his heart transplant, because he was on Joe Rogan after his heart transplant as well. And when I saw him on there, and yeah, man, you're like, ooh, man, that is not the CT Fletcher, that I listen to and that I watch, while I'm working out, as he tells me, what a POS I am.
I love
You know,
some of his quotes, dude. I love it.
his his videos in the gym are awesome, and but he's spot on though, right? People they comment on his YouTube video and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you're not going through a full range of motion and this, that, and the other. And he's like, okay, well,
At least I'm
get your
in
ass off the
motion.
couch and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's like, go, well, get your ass off the couch and go to the gym and just do it my way. Do it any old way. Just go to the gym, you know. And so, I like that. I do like CT Fletcher. One, he's funny, and two, like that dude he is a freak of nature.
Which these guys put in the work, and I don't say they don't. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I don't hop on the roid train, because I don't know what happens, Luke. If I take roids and don't do anything and continue my same lifestyle, does
Nothing will
my fat
happen.
just become fatter?
Nothing will happen.
It's like, Josh, I mean, these guys are putting in the work hours and hours and
Oh
hours
yeah,
in the gym. And you'd almost wish that it was more of an open topic, open discussion, because I do believe, just from what I've read, and it's funny because I even talked to my son about this now, because he's 20, and you know how it is at his age. He's starting to lift and work out and get in shape. And it's like, you're good at your age, this and that. But I think there's a conversation to when you get to our age, to where maybe a cycle here and there is probably beneficial. I think long term is probably beneficial, right?
Yeah, man, it's the FDA has never come up with the recommended levels of testosterone for different age groups, right? It's doctors that do that. So you go to a doctor, so it's like, okay, an 18-year-old will have this particular level, let's say 10, right? And a 21-year-old will have a 12, because most of the time your testosterone hits its peak at about 21 years old. So a 30-year-old will have, like, I don't know, 8, we'll say. A 40-year-old will have 6. And what a lot of doctors will tell you is, oh, well, that's normal for you. Now, those who are pro hormone replacement therapy will say, no, 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 no. The normal level is your 21-year-old level. That's what we want to get you to, because that's when you're healthiest. That's when your body is repairing itself the fastest. And for men, it's testosterone. Period. Growth hormone is so expensive, and I don't want to mess with growth hormone. I would never do that because I don't know how it works. Like will your jaw grow and not your, look at Dana White, right? Look at Dana White and look at Joe Rogan. Dude, Joe Rogan's skull has grown. His skull has grown, and I don't know if he does hormone or growth hormone anymore, but he did for a while. And that Dana White too. Good Lord, their skulls grew. So, but anyway, back to the hormone replacement testosterone. I mean, yeah, man, it's when done properly, I think it's one of the healthier things that someone in their 40s or 50s could do. It's not medical advice, but man, I just I've of course I've done it in the past. It's not expensive. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. And man, when you're on it, you just get that testosterone level. You're not roided out. It's not like that. But when I'm on it, I sleep better. You just go to a doctor, take a blood test, and they'll give it to you. But I sleep better. My mood is elevated. I don't get worn out at the end of the day. You can just go harder. I don't feel like I'm 21. I'll never feel like that again. But man, it's just you eat
But at our
better.
age, once you start it, you have to stay on it, right? I mean, or do they
Well, it
can
depends
they
on.
cycle you off?
Yeah, it depends on what you're on. If it's a low level, like a super low level, you don't necessarily have to cycle on and off. But if they give you some kind of treatment where you're taking one shot a week, a full CC or a CC and a half, I don't care what any doctor says in your intramuscular, you got to cycle on and off that. Otherwise, you're going to have to go on a few other types of like estrogen blockers to keep your body in line. But if you cycle off of it and then go back on, that's not ideal. The best thing is just a normal dosage every day, whether that's the subdermal pellets, where it's just time release, and it just it's more of a natural thing. You're not spiking your testosterone, you're just bringing it up to a certain level. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of folks that do it. A lot of guys don't want to say it, but it's like, come on, man. You're 52 years old, and it's okay. You don't have to be ashamed of it. I think it's completely normal. I think insurance companies should get on that train too. Because what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if you can, develop a healthy lifestyle in people and healthy hormone levels, they're not going to be as sick, you know?
Now, if only some people would have pushed this out for like the last 2.5 years. I mean, right? That was probably a prime opportunity to push that healthy lifestyle to, it's the preventative measures you can take. Hey, at the end of the day, and even now they're talking about. I think I published an article the other day, I tweeted an article the other day where they're saying, COVID now is right there at the same level of the flu. It's actually less dangerous than the flu. Again, depending on who you are, this and that, but. Cardiovascular disease will remain the number one killer going forward, things like that. And there's just a lot of things that you can do on your own. And that the administration, both administrations, I don't care who, both of them, either one, that was their chance. That was that significant emotional event Josh talks about a lot where, hey, guys and gals, like no poop, this is the time that we need to get in shape. You guys are at home. You need to get out there walking. You need to get out there running. You need to lift some weights, do some sit-ups, do some push-ups, whatever. I did have a question for Josh, I guess for both of you, but I'll start with Josh. So we talked about going overseas, downrange, Afghanistan, Iraq. And I think one of the things that those theaters taught me, because we were Garrison Army when we joined. We're of the age where we joined into the Cold War, right? We had Haiti and Bosnia, but at the end of the day, they weren't really shooting Americans, and we weren't really shooting back unless we were responding to a specific incident or what have you. So I could tell you our view of the threat, and you talk about going out there and doing dumb things, our view of the threat and risk changed. Our perspectives changed, and primarily through experience. So when you look at soldiers now, service members now, because now you're going to start seeing a lot of people without combat patches because Afghanistan's not there anymore. So where do you think this takes? Where does the military go for here for the next 10 years, provided that we're not into another war in the last 24 months of Sleepy Joe's administration? Where does the military go from here, and how do you maintain that level of experience that, or I guess knowledge that you only gain through experience?
So it's a good question. And the quick shorter answer is I don't know. Because not only, not only do you not have, Iraq, Afghanistan anymore, you have Iraq in some limited, very limited capacity. Not nearly the numbers that we had, back at the height of the Iraq War, obviously. Um, you know, that's only a small part of that problem. The other problem is that you have policies which are driving good folks out. Um, you know, so the Navy just came out and quietly reversed the vaccine mandate. Uh, for a number of their folks, you had that big uproar, in the SEAL community about the vaccine mandate. And I know personally 3 SEALs who got out. They ETS'd out of the military rather than take the vaccine. Um, so when you think about how long it took, one, for that individual to join the military, right? You're not coming in straight off the street as a SEAL, right? You think that person, join the Navy, um, or the Marine Corps. Not too many Marines actually make it through SEAL training for some reason. It's weird, but anyway, it's neither here nor there. So you take that person; they've got to be in. They're in the Navy for at least a little while, and then they go to Buds, right? And, once you make it through, let's say you make it through Buds your first time, and then you get to a SEAL team, and now you're an actual, now you're a SEAL. You've got some experience as a SEAL. You're a seasoned member on that team. Now you're gone. You think about all the money that the military invested in that individual, getting them to that point, just walked out the door. So not only are you, do you not have your forces, your garrison army now, your garrison military, not only do you not have the amount of combat experience that you once had because those wars are done and over, but now you're implementing these policies which are forcing good people out the door. Um, so, you know, I think that with the issue you brought up, I don't know how they maintain it. I know what I would do to start maintaining it. I would get rid of those shitty policies immediately that are forcing good folks out the door. I would get rid of the wokeness that's in the military. The Air Force is going to um, you know genderless pronouns to where you know you can't refer, you have to use, you can't use him, her, it's them, they. It's just like, that's nonsense, right? There's a lot of good people, and a lot of good people, they're going to be, they're going to do the quiet quitting, and they're just going to, they're not going to announce their departure. They're just going to go quietly, into the night. And they're going to be done. They're going to retire. They're going to ETS, and you won't hear from them again. But the first thing I would do was be reverse these policies, that are forcing good folks out, and they're also keeping good people from joining. Right, they're also keeping good folks, from joining the military, and at a certain level. It was I equate it back to, who's that sergeant major of the Army? Sergeant Major of the Army Preston, probably one of the worst sergeant majors of the Army in the history of the United States Army. When he came out with that dumbass tattoo policy, to where no sleeve tattoos, you can't have tattoos below the elbow, you can't have, basically it was damn near you couldn't have any tattoos, right? And his reasoning was, he said that when he goes and visits a unit, and he goes and does physical training with them in the mornings, he's like, I feel like I'm running with biker gangs, and now the Boy Scouts like, well, if I'm going to Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, pick your war zone, I'd rather go with a biker gang than the Boy Scouts. Give me the biker gang every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's just it's that mentality, that is now way more prevalent. Uh, that's going to destroy the military. And Jesse Kelly says it all the time. That I want to pose the same question to Luke as well. Jesse Kelly says it all the time. We're going to lose the next major war. We really are. You have 70% of the American population who's not fit for military service. They're automatically disqualified, based on low education. They're overweight. They can't pass, physical fitness test, and stuff. So we're in a bad spot, and it's not getting better. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. But I would really like to get Luke's thoughts on this as well.
Well, like you, I know a few. I know a few. They weren't SEALs. These guys were Green Berets, and one guy actually got out at like 16 years because of the vaccination policy. He and some other stuff. He just was not happy with the way things were going. It's like, man, are you sure? He's like, I'm 100% sure. And to be fair, he was National Guard, I think. He's either National Guard or reserves, but he has another job, and he's okay with it. But that's a guy who's standing by his principles to get out, not necessarily like old boy who shot Bin Laden in the face. What an idiot! Got out at like 2 years with 2 years left, and then wanted his retirement. It's like, bro, as much as I hate to tell you this. What's the guy's name? Ugh,
O'Neill.
No deal.
O'Neill. Yeah, it's like as much, yeah, it's great you killed Bin Laden, but despite what your SEAL teams have been saying all these years, SEAL Team 6, you are not special, my friend. Not at
It
all.
was really dumb.
Yeah. But yeah, are we going to lose the next war? It depends on who it's against, but we just lost a 20-year war. So, I mean, maybe, Jesse Kelly could count that.
Good point.
uh, the woke stuff is crazy, but I'm in a unique position where I get to talk to some of the younger soldiers out there, in particular officers, which I find fascinating. I get to hear that first lieutenant's perspective, and not just my daughter, but others as well. I get to hear their perspective, and it really is fascinating. The three of us came from an NCO background, and but to Roger's point and kind of to yours, Josh, is they understand they don't have combat patches, and that bothers them because there's still people kicking around with them in, and they're going away fast. I asked my daughter, how many people in your company have combat patches? She's like, two in the entire company. And I was like, and what about the battalion? She's like, well, there's a handful because you've got your
Wow.
senior NCOs and your 05s and a couple 04s smattered about. But they all want to go to war. They think they want to go to war because they want to earn. We were the same way. It's like, oh man, freaking Bosnia. If I could just get to Bosnia, people will look at me differently, and I will have earned my stripes. I'll be the hard charging, hip deep in hand grenade pins guy. And then it was Kosovo, and then it was Afghanistan, then Iraq, and then back to Afghanistan. You join the military for most people, I would say most people, maybe not. Roger would have a better perspective on this than me, but I tend to, I tend to think that everyone else thinks like me. But, when I joined the Army, I was like, man, I'm joining the Army to go to war. I know we're not in one right now. Bill Clinton's the president and all that, but I was expecting it. I wanted it, and these kids are no different. I do believe, I hope, just based on what my daughter's told me and stuff like this, it's getting more NTC heavy, NTC JRTC heavy. They're getting more into the ground war, force on force type fighting. They're getting away from the Afghanistan stuff, and they're getting back more on a footing of like the 1990 footing, where they're ready to go into Desert Shield, Desert Storm. They're working on movement, logistics, and just basic tactics. So they're running them through that. I think it's getting more on that footing. So in other words, near peer competitors, China, so on and so forth. So yeah, I guess, where do we go from here? Where does the military go from here? I personally believe, hopefully, that they're getting more on a 1990s type footing. Late 80s, early 90s. But back then it had its problems too, right, Roger? Like 1989, 90, 88, 87, it was very hard to get people in. And I don't know about retention back then, but I do know that it was hard to recruit back then. And the way I understand it now is recruitment, especially retention, is we're in crisis mode, like Josh was saying. Does that mean you change the standards? I don't know, but we're going to have to do something, because I don't want to. It's hard to equate this to any time in history because, again, we just lost a 20-year war. The Americans are tired. They don't have the stomach for it. If we hadn't have been in Afghanistan, in fact, if we hadn't have pulled out of Afghanistan, and left somebody there, here's the question to you, Roger. If we would have stayed in Afghanistan, And I'm not saying this would have been a good thing or a bad thing, but if we would have stayed there, kept Bagram Airfield, and just kind of, went into our shell and not retreated like that, and the Russians still went into Ukraine, do you think the American people's appetite for getting into another shooting war would be any different than it is now? Because I think the appetite is low. That would be the worst thing Joe Biden could do, is send troops in there and any type of force on force to Ukraine, because the American people are just tired. What do you think?
That's a great question. And I agree with you. And I don't know if you have the American population that's tired of it, but like Josh talked about the policies, and we've had some disagreements here and there on a couple of them, but I think the bigger picture there is the greater population's view and perception of the military. And when you look at what a lot of and I'll say it, it's a lot of the Democrats, a lot of the Democratic leaders, because we had a high time there in the military, especially after 9/11. Recruiting was on the high, retention was on the high. Everybody wanted to be in the military. The floodgates were open, man. We were letting folks in. We could be picky, choosy, this and that. But then, we go through this change, and the military always changes. But generally speaking, it's, at least through my experience, it's always been a little bit more gradual, as opposed to all of a sudden we went to this last 2 years where everything just went woke with the military. And then you've got General Milley, that dude doesn't meet any standards I've ever had to uphold. And then some odd years that I was in, and their focus, and we're not talking about Desert Storm where you've got the military commander out there talking about this is what's going on, this is the objective we're achieving, yada, yada, yada. We're just talking about just day to day. It seems like the military was in the limelight for a good 6 months there. I mean, you've got General Milley, they're talking about, well, I want to know about white racism and white extremism. And I'm like, dude, this is like on national television. Maybe, okay, that's a conversation that you can have in the background with your leaders, but maybe that should not be the focal point of the U.S. military right now or ever. Because our job is to win wars, deter wars, and if that fails, win, right? That's the overall mission of the military. So I think that the focus of the military, and this is what's interesting when you talk about the younger generation, is how do they see it? How do they see themselves? Do they feel respected, as opposed to, because there was also a time period there, especially when you look at after post-Vietnam, and even with our year groups, where the U.S. military wasn't so popular. Where I've seen parades down there where people are spitting in your face. And I was in Monterey for a while, and they had a parade and people were spitting in your face, calling you baby killer and this and that. So just kind of, I think a lot of that is just due to the overall public opinion that's been shaped by the media. It's been shaped by the media. It's been shaped by the left. It's no different than the police officers are going through now. But going back to keeping a small, and I think in a nutshell, that this is my problem. And I know there's a lot of other issues with Afghanistan, but the objective with Afghanistan was never clearly defined immediately after our actions post 9/11. Okay, you go out there, you want to kill the bad guys, that's great. Then you get to where, okay, we're going to help topple government. Okay, that's great. Now we want to help install a new government. Okay, that's great. Now then we got to where we're going to help out the infrastructure here. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure. Well, there is no rebuilding because it was never there to begin with. You're actually having to build the infrastructure because they never had any. And then I think, and this comes down to Josh's and I think our later years, you got to a point where, okay, we've all, like, nobody will say it, but we know that, hey, infrastructure mission ain't happening. And we just, I felt like, especially in the last 5-6 years, we just became stagnant. Like, okay, we're going out there and we're going to continue doing what we're doing. Of course, the policies are changing. The rules of engagement are changing. We're becoming less and less aggressive, more and more passive. So then we're just kind of there, but there is no more mission. And I think that's where they failed ultimately in Afghanistan was, and you can take this back 10 years, is that should have changed. What's up, Luke?
As Jesse would say, our listener Jesse, at some point you got to build that well.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, you have to continue to reassess, right? I mean, they should be some, obviously you have longer term goals, but you have short term goals, and they're beating up Blake Masters out here. And Josh has been famous for saying this for years. Blake Masters released a commercial like, hey man, we need a new chain of command because all of our generals out there, all they've done is lose wars. And they're running a commercial. It's like, well, what part of that is actually not true? It's all true. And again, there's a bigger picture to it. I understand that. And at the end of the day, it's civilian run. So you take your orders. But that's the biggest piece that I have with Afghanistan, is that there was just no updating and changing of the objective to where, hey, at the end of the day, not building their infrastructure, that doesn't have to be seen as a failure if that's never the mission to begin with. Because I tell you this, anybody who'd ever step foot over there knows that, hey, this is not going to get rebuilt. This is not going to get built. We're not talking about Europe. Okay, where post World War II, there was already some infrastructure there, and you're helping them get back on their feet. And same thing with Japan and this and that. It never existed over there. So to say, and the military, we're always the worst at building stuff. I mean, anybody tell you that, hey man, we're good at wrecking stuff, we're good at killing things. When it comes to building or rebuilding, that's Department of State mission, man. And if Department of State can't do that, then maybe we need to reevaluate just our mission set as a whole, as far as the U.S. government. Going back to what you're saying with your daughter and them, I think that's actually pretty good, because I think one of the fallouts that you're seeing right now, and it's weird because it changes day to day with Russia and Ukraine, where they were like celebrating the other day, like, oh, Russia's being pushed back, and we told you stick by the Ukraine and this and that. And it's like, hey, go pull up a map and see what Russia controls right now. And who knows what their objective is, right? I mean, the Russians have their own objective, and it is what it is. And maybe we find out, maybe we don't. But one of the things that I do think we see with the Russian army, regardless of how it turns out or whatever, it is a lot of that logistics. It's that movement. You do see a lot. It's Bush League. It's Bush League. And I think when you look at what our movement was, I mean, I can tell you just from my own school set, what folks in my position a generation before me versus what I learned in school, as far as maneuverability, that type of stuff, is night and day. Because I really didn't learn a whole lot of stuff. It's like, hey, get on a C-17, we'll be over in theater in 18 hours. Somebody's going to pick you up and we're going to rock and roll. And it's a lot different. So I do think, and I do like to see the younger generation going back to some of the fundamentals of the military, of the Army. The problem is there's a fine line there, and I'll kick it over to Josh. There, we tend to do things in extremes, right? So it's always extreme left, extreme right. And I'm not sure, even though there's a place for some of this stuff, because there was some good that came from it. I don't know. I hate to see us go back to a purely garrison army where it was just shine your boots, read your soldier study guide, go to your E5 board, and boom, now you're sergeant major of the Army. I hate to see us go back to that. So I'm hoping that there's some middle ground there where, from the sounds of, I was actually surprised, Luke, when you said that she had, 2 people in her company that had combat patches left?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't feel like we're that far removed from when Josh and I retired and left. That's hard for me to fathom. So I don't know, Josh, if you got anything else to say on that.
Yeah, I got a couple things. So it's not hard to fathom. It is, and it's not, because there at the end, I mean, really, the only people who were going to northern Iraq and Syria, was the, really the SOCOM community. And you had your, you had your bolt-ons, support. We had, Marine artillery and, folks like that. But, by and large, the first infantry division wasn't, pushing in, and first cab wasn't coming in with tanks and, helicopters and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, we weren't far removed, from, when we retired from the fight, but, we were kind of in a, just based on, where we were at, is, it's was not the norm. But I do agree. It is good to see, especially the younger generation get back to the CMTCs, because that's where you're going to learn the basics. That's where you're going to, master the MDMP, the troop leading procedures. That's where, and that stuff is going to be very, very important when the balloon does go up, and it will, eventually. That stuff does become very important. And I can't but sound like a damn sergeant major there for a second.
Well, let me ask you this, Josh.
Ridiculous.
This is important, because we always fight. We always, once we end a war, we're stuck in the last war that we fought, and
Yep.
that's that way with the TTPs, equipment, uniforms, whatever. What do you think? Especially, we know what's going on with China. You can throw Russia in there. Just the nature of warfare going forward over the next 10, 20 years. Do you have any thoughts on what we should be focused on, or the force as a whole?
So I think the force as a whole needs to turn around and focus on, a hybrid model. We to think that, to think that we're going to have another Battle of Kursk, where, we've got hundreds of tanks on each side, battling it out with each other and stuff. I I don't think that's, that realistic. I think what you're going to see is kind of what you're seeing in Ukraine. You're going to have this hybrid style of warfare that, there's going to be a little bit of conventional and a little bit of coin all mixed in, together. We're going to be dealing with
Tell them,
proxies.
tell them what coin is.
It's counterinsurgency, is what coin stands for, right? And so we're going to see this hybrid mix of conventional and insurgency type warfare, in the places that we're going to be in a fight. Because here's the deal: China could take Taiwan today. We are not going to war with China. We are not going to get in a force on force fight with China. One, the Biden administration is not going to do it, and anybody who thinks different I think you're nuts. And you know there will be embargoes, there will be a lot of diplomatic measures taken. The one thing, we are not going to start launching rockets at China. We're just not going to do it. I don't see that happening. So and the same with Russia. If we got into Russia, it's going to be through a proxy, much like it was, in the with the then the Soviets in Afghanistan. I can tell you right now, there are absolute U.S. forces on the ground in Ukraine that are advising the Ukrainians. We're obviously supplying the Ukrainians. Hell, we just sent them another couple hundred million last week. God knows why. So that I think that is going to be the future of warfare. I don't see these big force on force anymore. So hopefully the CMTCs are incorporating that within there, because we're very good at the force on force piece. We're very good at the land battle. Or obviously we displayed that in Desert Storm. With our technology, we really suck at insurgency. We really suck at coin. And you talk about we just lost a 20-year war. You think about it, all these commanders that are out there, the senior ones, the flag officers, they spent the last 20 years losing 2 wars, and writing books on leadership. So I could tell those junior officers, one thing would be, don't look to your senior leaders right now for leadership, because they're not it.
That's right
They're
up there with
absolutely
Stetler
100%
being
not it.
fired and then being hired by Harvard to talk about journalism.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. It's absolutely nuts. But one of the main problems that we have, and Eisenhower warned us about this. Our military, our defense, industry is so tied in. It's within our economy. And Eisenhower warned us about this. And so, for those young officers, the balloon is going to go up on your watch. I promise you that, because there's a lot of money to be made in war. And I tell you right now, there are war hawks in DC that would love nothing more than to drag this country into another hot war. And they won't even think twice about it, because they need their stocks to go up. So
everybody does right now. I think all 3 of us we could have our stocks go up a little bit.
Dude, yeah, these kids were excited when Ukraine kicked off. They're calling me up, messaging me, "Hey, what do you think the odds are that we're going to actually go to war?" And they weren't scared of it. They were just kind of hoping that it would kick off, because they don't care about foreign policy. They don't care about that stuff. Think back when we were 22, 24 years old. We didn't think like we do now. And but that was encouraging. And I think that this whole thing with Russia, they've really exposed themselves as a third-rate military with nuclear weapons. It's like Pennsylvania with nukes. It's like, man, you guys suck. I worry about China, and Josh is right. It's going to be hybrid, because I'm here to tell you now, if it's force on force, Navy on Navy, we would whip up on China. We would. But you inject that hybrid aspect into it, and boy, I don't know. It's gonna get kind of dicey for us, because I'm sure the Chinese have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. Because they don't want it. They know that if it's straight up force on force, they're going to get their clocks clean. I'm not saying we're going to go and invade Asia like the guy in The Princess Bride said, never getting a land war in Asia, and never challenge a Sicilian to a contest of lying or whatever it was. Yeah, they know that, so I'm sure they're working on a lot of stuff that we're absolutely not expecting, or maybe we are. I just often wonder, China actually, we could really go into this. It's like China could invade Taiwan tomorrow, and we probably wouldn't do anything significant about it. It's like that begs the question. So then why don't they just do it? Well, China is kind of hurting right now, their economy. We talked about this real early on, first 10 episodes or so, that China is going through, it's different than what we went through in the housing crisis, but they went and sunk just a ton of money into construction all over the country, and no one is living in those buildings. No businesses are moving in, and they're kind of having to pay the piper right now. It's a little bit of a debt crisis, if you will. Their economy is a lot different than ours, but they are going through a bit of a financial crisis right now. Centrally controlled economy, you can stave that off for a little while, but that may be one of the reasons they're like, you know what, now's not the time. We can't afford whatever sanctions will come down at this time. But I do believe they're biding their time. But like we've said, I think it's going to be a slow thing, and it'll just eventually Taiwan will just kind of be absorbed into China. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, it's it's a fun mental game to think about. What would happen, what wouldn't happen. I want to talk about this now, since we're still kind of on the military thing, instead of bringing it up at the end of the show. So my daughter Amber made it through sapper school, which is just insane. It's such an accomplishment for her. Her class started out with 60 folks. The attrition rate was 50%. So only 30 of those 60 made it through the class and successfully graduated. Most of the 50% were recycled back to the end of the first phase or something like that. But 50%. And for the females, I think 6 started out and 2 made it. So you're absolutely right. If Mo can make it through, so can Amber. But yeah, it's amazing because, she is not she's very, very fit. Did a 3-mile run in under 20. It's right at 20 minutes. That's pretty fast. She said that's the fastest I've ever run 3 miles, which is impressive. So she's very fit. She's strong for her weight. And the Army, I think we might have talked about this too. I forget what we talk about offline and what we talk about on the show, but the new Army fitness program is making girls look like CrossFitters, man. And I have witnessed my daughter's body change from like a runner, a lean, sleek runner, looking like a deer out there running, to straight up CrossFitter. Like she's getting the muscles, and all that stuff. So, but again, she's not big, she's thin, not skinny, but she's got that muscle. And I was really worried about her, going through, being able to keep up with the strength aspect of it, the rucking aspect of it. And when they were out in the field, is 90-pound rucks plus charges that she was carrying. I was like, are you like really 90-pound rucks? And she showed me this, the sapper school thing on Facebook, and no joke, I mean, those rucks look about 90 pounds. It's like, man, how far were you going in those? She's like, about 2 clicks at a time. At a time, how many times a day? She's like, I don't know, 6 or 8. And I'm like, mother of God. It's like, she's, I don't know, 120 pounds, maybe 100, between 120, 130. And it's like, man, how do they do it? But I was worried about that aspect, but she made it through, and she really learned a lot from the peer process, the peering. And, she got a couple of poor peer reviews, and that was a real eye opener for her. Because it's not, they called her, they didn't call her names or anything. It's like, hey, she does this, she does that. And she had never seen that before, and it comes anonymously. So it's like, now she had to self-examine why people were saying that, because perception is reality. She doesn't feel that she's being that way. But that was a big part of it. You learn a lot. It's a 4-week leadership school. It's all there is to it. And it's fun listening to her talk about that. Now she's all gung ho, and she's like, well, maybe, what do you think about Ranger School? It's like, why would you want to do that? My God, why would you want to put yourself through that? Just enjoy, your sapper tab for a little while and then reassess. But real proud of her for making it through. Apparently it's a lot tougher school than I thought initially, just after hearing her say it. But that's good on her for doing that. It's really changed my mind. I still hold some of my core views about females in combat. I still hold those views, but the reality is they're there now and they're going to be there. So we have to adapt and we have to just accept it. There's no going back from this for a while anyway. So I still hold the same core views of that, but my perspective has changed a little bit witnessing, her experiences as a combat engineer. So yeah, so that's kind of off topic as far as China and where we go next, but there are still good soldiers out there. There are still good officers out there. They're not all dirtbags. So I'll tell you what, man, these guys, good Lord, Roger, the kids now are just enormous. They're enormous. Like
It's all the
they're all,
milk.
yeah, it's something. They're just big. I swear. We always say this, man. Kids weren't that big back in our day, but Josh, Roger, think about AIT. We were all just skinny, runty kids. These kids now are just jacked, and
Dude, if
they're
you have
big.
young kids and they are on non-GMO foods, you're doing them a disservice. I'm just letting you know that up front. And that is a reality of it. That is a fact.
I was about to say, I mean, it's everything that they put in our foods, and it's not necessarily a good thing either. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not all good. Um, my wife points it out. We were in the grocery store maybe a month ago or something like that, and we needed to go grab some chicken, dude. The non-organic chicken, like the organic chicken breasts were normal size chicken breasts. The regular chicken breasts that the non-organic, dude, they were literally, I think one chicken breast was 3 pounds.
God,
It was massive. It was massive. And you're looking at that and you're like, bro, that's not natural. Like it's not natural. All the stuff that they're pumping into your food, it's not good for you. That's why dude, and I think each generation is going to get bigger, right? You're looking at kids who are now bigger. Like it's because they have eaten that crap that
I
is
think
going
about
into
that
their food.
chicken. I think about that chicken with walking around the pen or whatever, looking like a porn star with 3 pound
Yeah.
breasts.
Yeah, walking around looking like Dolly Parton, back in the '80s, man. It's like, dude, it's
But
like
what do you
that's
do
not
if you
natural.
have what do you do if you have a son? Like so, and I get it. I totally agree with you. But the reality is these kids in school, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It is different with having a son and a daughter. I don't need my daughter to be 6'4" and weigh 225, but I don't want my boy to be 5'4" and weigh 115 either. So I mean, do you just do a mixed bag of like Monday, Wednesday, and
Dude,
Friday we do,
we're,
hormone chicken and
we're going down a different rabbit hole here, which I love it. I love it. I love this free form conversation. But like after everyone listens to this episode, after, of course, while you're waiting for our next one to come out, the Joe Rogan interviewed this guy, Max Lugavere, who's a big time, he's really into diet and stuff like that. And it was just fascinating. They always talk about the GMOs and the processed foods. So it can go one way or the other. I talk about these enormous kids, right? In particular, this one I'm thinking about, dude, he's just built differently, right? The bigger bones, he's just bigger, right? And he lifts and all this stuff. He cares about what he looks like. But as we all know, when you get jacked and you stop working out, that's a problem. I know that it's physically whatever, muscle doesn't literally turn into fat, but something happens where it goes from your chest down to your gut. It's like it falls. And yeah, they're getting bigger, and these are all kids that are working out and stuff. So the flip side of that coin is how many fat people there are, right? It's just, and every, Joe Rogan, all these people, they say the same thing. It's the processed foods and the sedentary lifestyle, which is, we've beat that horse to death. But that Joe Rogan, Max Lugavere, and I kind of cut Josh off, so kick it back to you, Josh. It was very fascinating on what Americans don't get enough of, what the levels should be, and what they actually are, and it's kind of crazy. And what you get out of your body what you put into it, and it's I'm no health nut or anything like that, but I'm here to tell you, I think the three of us would agree, especially Roger, that you change your diet and your body, you change your diet for the better, and the more disciplined you are, so on and so forth, the more you're going to feel it. I mean, in the past few months, I've changed my diet. I wouldn't say radically, but I've cut a few things out. Man, I just feel 100, not 100% better. I feel a lot better though, you know?
Yeah. So there's a good book out there. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's by Bessel van der Kolk. It's and it breaks down exactly what you're talking about, Luke, how different foods affect the human body, the human brain, our actions, how we feel, and if you talk to, we had the Satterleys on, and one of the things that they talk about on a continuous basis is how your diet impacts traumatic brain injury, how it impacts post-traumatic stress, how and it's so important, to figure out what you're putting in your body. Now, don't get me wrong, man. Dude, I love to go to Five Guys and crush some burgers and fries. I'll eat a bowl of of Fruity Loops every now and then, stuff like that. But I really do try and watch what we buy at the grocery store as far as like meats go and stuff like that, because in produce, because really concerned, not only what I'm what I'm eating, but I'm really concerned about what my kids are eating. And again, like, hey, once a month or so, you want to go grab McDonald's, on a Friday night, not a problem. Like, that's fine, right? Everything in moderation. Um, but to just like, hey man, let's go scarf down a 3 pound chicken breast, 4 or 5 times a week. Like, it's not like that. No,
But
like
would
that
that
is not.
change if you had three sons? And I say that seriously because I know families that just do organic, grain free, this and that, and there's a noticeable difference in their sons versus. And again, I don't know their family background. I just visually, right? So maybe some of it's just anecdotal or whatever. But there's a
No,
difference.
it wouldn't be any different. I wouldn't want I wouldn't want my son, if I had a son, I wouldn't want, him to put, all that GMO food in his body just so he can be bigger, stronger, faster, right? There's other ways to get bigger, stronger, faster. Um, are you gonna get CT? Are you gonna get CT or liver big by eating organic stuff? No, but I mean, once you after you turn 18, like, okay, if you want to do that, go do that. But I, you think about like Tom Brady. You know how strict his diet is. You think Tom Brady's putting a whole bunch of
F that dude.
GMO food in his body? No, that dude's diet is so strict. That guy's probably never had sugar. Like, he has probably never had sugar. And if he has had it, I guarantee you he hadn't had it in the last 20 years. You know,
We should
um,
get Jed on here to talk about GMO stuff because saying GMO is almost like a misnomer now. It's like saying fascist, because genetically modified, right? What does that mean? Well, farmers have been doing that for a long time. How do you think we got so many dog breeds out here? An English bulldog versus a Doberman. It wasn't scientific. They weren't taking genes out and splicing them and making a Doberman, or making that first wolf that came in the cave into a English bulldog, obviously. But it's breeding, and you can do that at the crop level. So, genetically modified. It's kind of,
Yeah, I
I
think we're
think.
using the wrong term. I mean, we throw it out there to
Well,
be we're talking about hormones and this and that. I think
yeah,
we're
yeah.
probably using the wrong term for it. So yeah, I agree
Jed,
totally.
who I was going to appoint as my Secretary of Agriculture in our last episode, this is kind of what he does for a living. I think it'd be interesting to get him on and talk about this a little bit. But out here where I live, as I'm driving down the interstate, there's a huge factory just kind of out, and this is all farmland out here, like big cotton country up here, cattle country a little further north, oil country south. There's this big factory, and it's a Bayer factory, like Bayer aspirin, and like they have the logo, and the logo looks like the old Bayer aspirins, Bayer going down, Bayer to the side, the Y is the meets in the middle. And I was like, Bayer, I mean, why is there an aspirin factory out here? Well, what I didn't know, guys, is that Bayer bought Monsanto. Did you guys know that? Bayer is now Monsanto. There's
I
really
didn't
no
know that.
Monsanto. Yeah, so that we've got a Monsanto whatever right outside of the city here. I thought that was crazy. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea, man. And I think it would be fantastic to get Jed on here, and so he can talk about it because obviously he'll know a lot more about it than us, and we're probably using the wrong terminology, like you said, Roger said. But I think it's really important. People just need to figure out. People really need to do some due diligence and figure out where their food's coming from and what's in their food. I'm going to text you guys an article. Maybe we throw it up on maybe we throw it up in a blog or something. But there was a pork farm, a pig farm here in North Carolina that got caught feeding pigs plastic. And so what it was restaurants, grocery stores, all their leftovers and stuff. A lot of pig farmers, around the country will go and they'll buy, what's left over, what they can no longer sell because it's past its date that it can go on the shelf, stuff like that. And so they use that as feed for their pigs, which is fine. Yeah, man, you want to go, feed your pig some old Krispy Kreme donuts? That's fine, like not a problem. Well, a whistleblower took video of inside this place, and when the trucks were backing up all this food to go into the grinder, and on the other end of this grinder it comes out as pig feed. So if your dozen donuts that Krispy Kreme throw it away is still in that cardboard box, well, that goes into the grinder. They don't separate that stuff out. If your bagels from the grocery store are in that plastic container or that plastic bag, like it didn't get sorted out. That went into the grinder, and then it went straight to the pigs, and the pigs ate it, and then the pigs get slaughtered, and yeah, that's your sausage and bacon and pork belly, and I love all those things, right? I love me, dude. Just side note, if you pork belly and a fried green tomato sandwich, oh my lord. Anyway, right? So you don't know it, but you're literally eating plastic. You are consuming plastic because it's just people really need to dig in to where their food's coming from and what's being put in it and what's going on. I tell you what, we will never buy pork from a grocery store ever again.
Oh, what about the bacon, man? Like when I'm eating bacon, it's like I'm not doing it for my health. It's like if I light
No,
up a stogie, or smoke a cigarette, it's like, yeah, I know the risks. That's kind of how I feel eating bacon. I eat bacon and sausage. That's about the only, and pork rinds. I like me some pork rinds,
pork
but
rinds are good.
there's a definite difference. So I'm going to ask you where you get your bacon if it's not from the grocery store. But man, like over in Europe, specifically Slovenia, the pork over there, none of it, well, hardly any of it, especially if it's local, those are free range hogs. They don't even look like pigs. And boy, they don't taste like pigs. They don't taste like the pigs we eat. It tastes a lot different. I would say with the American palate, tasting that pork over there, it's like, ooh, I don't like this. But dude, guess what? That's how it's supposed to taste,
Probably
son.
gamier. That's what I
It's
normally
so
notice with like,
gamey.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Oh, it's so
it would be
gamey.
the equivalent. It would be the equivalent to a wild hog here. You
Did
know,
you know? Okay, did y'all know this about pigs? Right? If you take one of these pigs that's in these pig farms, and pig farms for the most part now are completely covered. They're not open. And but if you take one of those pigs that's 4 or 5 days from going to the slaughterhouse, you take that pig out, you put him out free range with no fences or on 20 acres. You say that pig will physically start to change. It'll physically, the snout will start getting longer, the legs get longer. It's weird, man, because they turn into wild hogs, like physically. Did you guys know that? I just learned that
yeah,
like a couple weeks ago.
yeah.
Oh, well, Josh knew.
Well, no, and and so here's the deal. The only reason I know that is because it was like a big breakout. It was like that movie Chicken Run, where all the chickens break out of and so they had it back in North Florida, and this was when I was still a kid. They had this big breakout. Tree fell, hit the fence. All these pigs got out, and they went into the swamps, and they found them, like a year later, hunters and stuff like that. They had noticed that they didn't look like your typical wild boars, your wild hogs. And so they said talking, it was on the news and everybody figured it out. It was like, those were a bunch of the pigs that got out of this pig farm. And they have physical changes, from not being in that farm anymore. And, but you take salmon, right? you can tell the difference between wild salmon and salmon you buy in the store. Salmon you buy in the store, it's got that nice, pinkish red color to it. Guess what? That's not natural. That's not natural. If you go and catch a salmon in the wild, it's not that color. And so, to answer your question, Luke, bacon, it's from a local farm now. It's from a local farm who, what? They're like, hey, you can come anytime. You can see our operation. You can see what we feed our, not only our pigs, but our cows and our cattle. And then, tell us what cuts of meat you want.
Dude, do they slice it for you? Because in Slovenia, they don't slice the bacon, right? It just comes in a slab.
So you get a slab bacon.
And,
yeah.
Yes. And so I got a little frisky during COVID, during the lockdown, because the only places that were open were the grocery stores and the gas stations. And my wife was back in the U.S. I got a little frisky and just threw that whole thing in a pan and I had myself a bacon steak. So it's pretty good, man. It's like eating a bacon steak. It was awesome. So, but it tasted different. It's still good. So, Josh, do they slice it for you?
You can get it either way. But if you get it sliced, it's the thick, it's the thick style cut. You're not getting the thin Oscar Mayer, cut there at the farm, but yeah, that's fine. The thick cut's better for BLTs anyway.
So the good news, Roger, is that those migrants that were dropped off at Martha's Vineyard, because the Martha's Vineyard people, they eat clean. They have Ida Garden or whatever her name is. The Barefoot Contessa was probably cooking for them. She really likes to eat those whole foods with no GMOs. So, I mean, I guess that's a good part of dropping them off in Martha's Vineyard. It's probably the healthiest thing we could have done for them is drop them off in a community that eats healthy, right?
Dude, yeah, so it took us an hour to get into this thing. We've been chatting about it all week. Abbott and DeSantis are in this game of like one-upsmanship now, and I love it. I love it. And it's, you can read all it. One, it just shows you the hypocrisy, and it's the hypocrisy of the left and the right, both of them. I don't care what party you're in, but right now it's focused on the left. They're not creating a problem. And we were in a FaceTime the other day with Luke and Josh, all three of us talking about this. You're bringing light to what the problem is, because, you talk about Holocaust deniers. Dude, I get on Twitter, there's still people like the fake border crisis. I'm like, fake border crisis? I mean, come down here let's not even talk about the humanitarian piece. Let's talk about just the fentanyl piece. I mean, we're having a huge problem with that. And Arizona's like, where do you think this stuff's coming from? Like, well, China. Okay, so do you think Chinese are smuggling this over? No. How do you think it's actually entering the country? There are a lot of people there that live in that upper Northeast, live in that upper Midwest. Fake border crisis. You just need this for the election. It's a MAGA crisis. That's what they're calling it. And it's like, hey, look at what happened with Martha's Vineyard. And dude, I love the tweets, because we all sit there, and Josh is really, really good at it. You sit there, you see the tweet, you're like, yep, this one ain't going to age well, right? Because what happened as soon as they came into Martha's Vineyard, they're like, oh, we accept you with open arms and we embrace you. And then it wasn't even like 30 seconds where you got the one lady that went viral, like, we can't have all these people here. We don't have enough homes for us, much less a bunch of illegals coming in from Venezuela. And then it was like 2 hours later, the military is putting them on buses to take them to a military camp or military base. You can't make this stuff up. And these people come out here, and it's the hypocrisy. They're talking about, we're going to charge him, DeSantis, with kidnapping, and Abbott dropping people off at at the Naval Observatory next to Kamala Harris's house. We're going to charge him with kidnapping and smuggling. So are you going to charge the Democrat mayor of El Paso as well? Because he shipped out like what? It was either 2 or 20. I think it might actually be 20. But he shipped out several thousand folks, and he's been doing it. He's like, what do you think we do with these folks? Here's what it comes down to. It's not a crisis because they don't see it. It's not in their backyard, so they don't care. Okay, it's fine to leave them in my backyard. You live in Texas. You live out here where myself and Luke are. That's where they want them to stay, which they think they're staying there, which they're not. Luke's been pretty good about educating folks on that. It's like, hey, this is not what they're saying. Now, we have a large population here, obviously, that stay because of the support in the Hispanic community have, but we also have a very large population that is trying to get to New York. They're trying to get to Miami. They're trying to get to DC. They're trying to get to Chicago. And when you saw the migrants, even at Martha's Vineyard, it's like you said, it's like, hey, we're just getting them closer to where they wanted to go anyway. And they were happy. They're like, hey, thanks for the ride. Appreciate it. because that's what they're trying to get to anyway. But they're fine. These these cities, these sanctuary cities. That's the hypocrisy, right? That's what we're talking about here. It's the oh, you need to accept everybody with open arms. We're sanctuary cities, yeah, because they want to talk about onesies and twosies and threesies. Let's talk about places in Texas where the one city where they're like, oh, by the way, the population was Eagle Pass, right? The population of Eagle Pass is 36,000 people. You know how many illegal immigrants have come across so far this year? 46,000 people. Literally more people than reside in that city. And Martha's Vineyard is bitching about 50 people, or the DC mayor bitching about 1,000 people, or Chicago, right? Which they're shipping them off to the suburbs. They're shipping them off to red suburbs throughout the state of Illinois. They're not staying right there in downtown Chicago, but because you have 1,000 people there at one time, it's, oh, now we have a crisis. No, we've always had a crisis, and it leads to a bigger problem that we need to work on solving. And I hate to tell you this, granted, you have to take a holistic approach to it, but the first part of this is securing the border. It just goes back to KJP. They're not literally walking across the border. Yeah, they actually are walking across the border. And with the one guy, I think it was on MSNBC, where he's like, and Fox did an interview with another guy. They're like, yeah, borders open. He's like, why do you think we come across? And we come across for free, and we come across illegally because it's open. And so now I get to a point where I don't even know, and we talked about this a little bit last episode, like, are they truly oblivious to what's going on? Which I don't believe that. You can't be that oblivious to it. Or it's just straight gaslighting. It's just straight, we're at to the point where we just straight lie to you. And at the same time, because you've got that, then you've got the celebration of our, economic successes, right? The same day that inflation comes out again at like 8.3%. Oh, by the way, the same time that, the Department of Defense is starting to advise soldiers and service members to go on food stamps to make up the difference. That's good. Now, I have obviously had my own issues with, we all three have with veterans and soldiers and service members and what they get, what they don't get, this and that. No service member should have to go on food stamps to make up the difference for inflation, period. I think when you look at their ultimate, and I think we're all three on agreement with that, but it just pisses me off because when you see the hypocrisy of the left, and none of this is solving any of the problems. What DeSantis and Abbott are doing are just highlighting it, which I think is good. It puts it on a national stage. Now it's a problem. But there's nothing that the administration is doing that's going to fix any of this stuff. They're not doing, from what and Luke, I'll throw it over to Josh first, and I'm sure Luke can get into more details. But from what I'm seeing and what I am reading, there's nothing proactive being done. They're finally starting to say, well, maybe we should start having talks with Venezuela and Honduras and Mexico. You mean like Trump did when he had the agreement with Guatemala and the other two countries? Yeah, it's like now you start to do this. Because they don't believe it's a problem. It actually just pisses me off. So I'll throw it over to Josh and get his thoughts.
Yeah, to answer your question, it's just straight gaslighting at this point because there's absolutely no way that the administration does not see the numbers, that are coming across the border, and number two, there's no way that they don't know that this is an issue. There's no way. It's straight gaslighting at this point. They know it's an issue. And quite frankly, it's not that they don't care. They want this. This is intentional, right? This is intentional because they are still going on. Where this is the third administration. The second Barack administration. Where he is quote fundamentally transformed the United States.
Do you think they turn into vote to Democrat voters though? Because they're betting on that. They're betting that a lot of these illegals, which when you look at their religious backgrounds, and this is like, hey, I don't know that they're playing their cards right, but Dems are betting that because they let them come across, they turn into Democrat votes.
Yeah, I don't think they're playing. I think maybe they think that, but they're definitely not playing their cards right because and we talked about this before. The vast majority of your Hispanic voters, especially coming out of Central South America, they're all Catholic. They don't buy into this nonsense, this them, they, no pronoun, no gender pronoun. They don't buy into that by and large. A lot of them, like I said, a lot of them are Roman Catholic. Like they just don't. That's not the Democrat voter base. So I think they're misplaying their hand a little bit on that.
I think it's. I really don't think that the Fox News media talking points are what do they say? Fundamentally changing and getting all Democrat votes. I think it's if there is a plan, if this is intentional, which I'm on the fence on that one. I hear you, Josh, but it's just like, I waffle between you and Roger. With Roger chalks it up to just incompetence and just, just being stupid, and Josh is like, it's intentional. I am right on the fence with that, because I don't think these people are smart enough to calculate second and third order effects of something this massive. So the votes piece of it, you're 100% right. A lot of the people coming across have the traditional Catholic family values, right? Which is definitely not in line with the Democrat Party right now. But it will translate into votes, because, as Roger said, these people are wanting to go to Chicago, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, smattering to Florida, so on and so forth. And I'm going to kick it back to you, Josh, because I have way more to say on this. But if they are playing the long game, they're playing the long game, the census long game, to where it's like, if we significantly boost these areas that are already blue, we're going to get more representatives out of the super blue areas. It's a census game, I think. I think that they're kind of betting on, well, we'll get more Democrat voters because more people will be on the dole, and we're all for that. But I think it's a districting game. That's the way I would look at it. Let's pack these places. Let's get the population up, and we can turn, Texas. We can truly turn it blue, because there'll just be more people. Because the census is based on everyone, not just citizens.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I do agree that it is the long game. I mean, you take a look at the long game that they played to, finally get into, the schools, the colleges, to educate kids, the long game that they took, in the media. It's a very, we talk about the GOP and how inept they are at anticipating things, and basically being on time and on message. The Democrats don't have that problem, because they do play the long game. They're like China. They're like, hey, you know what? We may not, this might not be for 10 years, but in 10 years, we are going to have this thing locked down. And then they play that game, and they do. So I'm right. It's the hypocrisy is the thing for me. And at this point, I don't even, hypocrisy may not even be the right term for it, because the left doesn't view it as hypocrisy, because they don't acknowledge it. And if you just don't acknowledge it, then, it does no good to, be like, well, you're being a hypocrite right now. Well, okay, well, they don't care. Because in 2017, Mary Bowser, from DC, she tweeted, quote, DC values our dreamers and our immigrant communities. All will continue to find sanctuary in our city, And then on September 16th this year, she tweeted, we're not a border town. We don't have an infrastructure to handle this type of a level of immigration to our city. We're not Texas. Right. So we went from being a sanctuary city. Send us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, to there's no vacancy. And it drives it. The thing that I love the most about Martha's Vineyard was, you have one the most racist people on the planet, white leftists. They are the most racist people on the planet ever. They put up their little signs, around Martha's Vineyard, like, all are welcome here. This is a safe haven, a sanctuary city, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Some brown people showed up in their neighborhood, and they lost their shit. And in less than 48 hours, they had the military in there to remove every single one of them. And Martha's Vineyard, one, is one of the richest zip codes in the United States. It's one of the whitest, and we're talking like milk toast white. Right? You sprinkle a little bit of diversity in there in the form of 50 people, and they lost it. And they were like, oh, we don't have room. Like that lady was like, we don't have room for this. Well, Airbnb says different, because right now, according to Airbnb, you have almost 1,000 beds available in Martha's Vineyard.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, Barack Obama put 600 people in a tent on his lawn in Martha's Vineyard. You don't have room for 50? That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. And and Justin, I was posting a lot about it on my personal uh book of faces page. And Justin had Justin had a great point. It's like, hey, you want to stand up there and you want to espouse your worldviews, your ideologies and your politics. Well, then you should be required to live by those. And that's what happened in Martha's Vineyard for about 48 hours before they got the military in there to deport all the brown people out of their neighborhood. And the last thing on it is they started a GoFundMe to help out with, quote, they declared a humanitarian crisis for 50 people. Now this is a place that gets upwards of 100,000 visitors every summer. Right. So 50 people show up unannounced and all of a sudden it's a humanitarian crisis. They started a GoFundMe, which raised, a little over $42,000. Well, guess what? Guess how they set that up? They set it up to assist in current and future instances, to take care of, illegal aliens that may wind up there. So the 50 folks from Venezuela, they don't see a dime of that money. They don't get a dime. Martha's Vineyard basically set up an endowment fund, um, you know, that they get to keep, and idiots donated to it. It is absolutely insane. I hope Beverly Hills, I hope Nantucket, I hope Martha's Vineyard's, still on that list, and I would pick, if I was Abbott and um, DeSantis. I'll say this, I'll kick it over to Luke. If I was them, I would send every illegal alien that I could possibly send to the 10 wealthiest zip codes in the United States, and I would keep sending them.
They did leave one illegal, but he had a fake birth certificate from Hawaii. Just saying.
Before I get started on this, I'll because hopefully I won't be all over the place. I do have a lot to say about it, but first off, I am 100% in favor of immigration, 100%. But it has to be controlled. There has to be a good policy in effect. Obviously, the policy now is a wreck, which I'll talk about in a second. But even the policy that's in place, let's say we build a wall, right? A 50-foot high wall that no one can get through, no one can get across, and we go back to how we handled immigration in 1994 or earlier, 1988. It still needs to be an improvement because, dude, I'm in favor of immigration and controlled, and it's just not controlled right now. But you look at the birth rate in the U.S. is plummeting. We're not able to keep up our population the way a superpower should be able to keep up its population. There's shortages of all sorts of labor. Go to a restaurant in Nashville, right, Roger, and try to find some servers. It's just we need immigration. We need it, and it needs to be better than a Colombian citizen stands in line for 6 hours just to get at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota just to get a form to fill out. They've got to bring the form back the next week, stand in line to see if the form can be accepted. No, there has to be. It's too long of a process for people that we actually need here. It's too long of a process. You streamline it, control it, and screen these people. These are the types of people we want here. These are the types of people we don't. This person can be a good American. This person is going to be able to assimilate into society and enrich our society with their skills and this and that. So I'm 100% in favor of immigration, but again, controlled. It has to be controlled and not controlled chaos. Right now, I describe what's going on at the border as controlled chaos. It is absolutely insane, and it stems from a simple. The problem is it's a policy problem. The only way to deport someone right now who crosses the border is if they're an active commission of a felony, to include if they've been deported before and they're trying to cross. Okay, so those people can be deported. Number two, if they're in the river or whatever, if you catch them before they've actually crossed into the U.S., you can turn them around to go back. And number three, if it's that Title 42 that everyone's talking about, if there is a significant threat to public safety or health. So that's the only, and those are the only three things that are deportable. So there's two types of people crossing the border. Okay, and this is important. Everybody needs to listen to this, because I think that this is what the big misunderstanding with what's going on at the border. There are the people who have been deported before or are criminals who are sneaking across into the interior. They're sneaking across. Those are the true, as we say, the true illegals. If those people are caught, they will be sent back because they've been deported before, or they're felons back in their country or here. Then there's the massive portion of people. That's one type. The other type is people who cross the border, they turn left or right and walk until they find a Border Patrol agent and they claim asylum. And those people are then given a court hearing for an asylum hearing date, and they're told to come back and appear in court. And then they're released. So that whole process, I don't know, none of this is a secret, can take, up to 10 days for the whole thing, and then they're released. Now, here's another important part. They have a plan. They have a point of contact here in the United States somewhere. And as we said, those points of contact are generally in New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Ohio, major population centers where there already are a ton of Venezuelans or Somalis or whatever. So what's going on down to border is they're given a court date to appear, could be anywhere from 6 months to years down the road, and then they're shipped off to where they want to go. They're being shipped off to where they want to go. End of quote, repeat the line. This has been going on for a long time. Okay. And this is the problem I have. I was like, I was saying to the guys, I was like, this is dumb optics. And they're like, it's not dumb because it's shedding light on the problem. I agree with that. The reason I said it's dumb optics is because this has been going on forever. You're just now realizing this is going on, Muriel Bowser. You're just now realizing this is going on, Lori Lightfoot. Everyone, this has been happening. They have been showing up. Now, because of the optics of it, now you realize, overall it's a good thing. But man, the egg has already been cracked on this thing. It's already we've already made an omelet. This has been going on for a while, and that's the thing. There needs to be some enterprising reporters out there that do Freedom of Information Act requests to the Border Patrol and ICE. Let's request all the manifests. Going back for a year, every single person is manifested onto a bus on where they're going. And again, you're moving 2 million people. There will be mistakes, I'm sure. This Venezuelan might want to go to Chicago and he's bused to New York, because there's a simple misunderstanding. We've all seen that, like when you get left on objective in Iraq, right, Josh? But in 99% of the cases, these people are being bused or flown where they want to go. And it's like, why is the media not covering this? Where's the context to all this? Because Joe Sixpack out there thinks that all these people being bused to Martha's Vineyard or to Kamala Harris's house, Joe Sixpack thinks that person crossed the border. He doesn't understand the asylum process, right? That he thinks of the border jumpers. They're just running as fast as they can into the U.S. and they're rounded up by Border Patrol in San Antonio. Most of these people aren't like that. They've claimed asylum. And I hate to tell people this, but man, a lot of these folks have legitimate asylum claims. And a lot of these people, whether people want to admit it or not, they're going to be good U.S. citizens. They're going to contribute. Yeah, I know it's F them, but dude, do you have any Irish blood in you at all? He's typing it out. I guarantee he does, dude. Ellis Island, man, come on. This country, fundamental change was the Irish in the Great Famine coming over. Italians, dude. Look, but it has to be controlled, right? But even back then, it wasn't controlled.
Here's my issue with the asylum claims. And you can speak to this a lot more than I can, is you don't get to travel to here from Honduras and then say, I'm claiming asylum here when you transited multiple other countries that you could have stopped and claimed asylum in. That's what pisses me off.
Yeah. What about an Afghan? Okay, you have an Afghan that didn't make it onto the plane, right? And this is just I'm not trying to catch you in anything. I honestly want to know your opinion. They didn't make it out of the plane the few days those planes are flying out, and they've managed to sneak out. They managed to get away from the Taliban. They managed to get all the way to the U.S. border. And what about that person? I mean, I personally, I'll tell you my opinion. I'll get yours. My opinion is we owe that Afghan. We do. We owe them. Now, they need to be properly screened and vetted so we know who they are, who they say they are. But some dude that worked as a translator for 10 years and we just left him there, we owe that person a debt. That's the way I see it.
100%. But that is apples and oranges to, your average person coming out of Guatemala.
I understand.
That's your average
I
person
agree
coming out
with
of
you.
Venezuela. Like that's
I
not
agree
even.
with you.
It's an
Well,
unfair. It's not even a comparable comparison.
I mean, well, but you acknowledge there are exceptions to that.
Sure, there's exceptions to everything, and I totally get that. What I don't like is that folks come and say, "Well, El Salvador is really dangerous, and I'm here to claim asylum." It's like, okay, no, I'm sorry, but you don't get to do that. We take in almost 1 million legal immigrants every year, the most out of any country in the world, the most out of any country in the world by far. It's not even remotely close to the number 2 spot. So when it comes to folks like, you know, hey, I get that, El Salvador is shitty. I get that Honduras is, one of the most dangerous countries in the world. I get that. I'm sorry for, I feel bad for you. I do. But, you don't get to cut the line out of folks who came here legally. And I agree with you. The immigration system is completely 100% broken, mainly because it's run by the United States government, right? And so we should absolutely fix that because nobody should have to go through the process like you described at the beginning just to, to come here legally. Like that's bullshit.
I
I 100%.
So we agree. We agree on
Yeah.
that. I do think that there are people coming over, even from Honduras, that we want here. They're simply using a loophole that they know they can use. But dude, we agree. Okay, the vast majority are taking advantage of the current policy and claiming asylum when they either don't have a legitimate claim or they're taking the best option. If they cross the border into Mexico, boom. If you're claiming asylum there, but Mexico has a different policy than us. So Roger, 2 million people in a year. That's not including the gotaways. Okay, gotaways I would have no idea what that number is. The gotaways are the people I was describing that sneak in and we just never see them again. True illegals, if you will. They're not even making an asylum claim. So let's just say 2.5 million people minimum have come in the past year. That's just the past year. How does this long term affect this mass migration? Long term, what are the effects to the U.S. national security, including the economy? Like, where do you see this going? Because, bro, we live with this now. We live with this because all these people get asylum claims. 2.5 million, or we'll say 2 million, are going to have an asylum hearing. Do the math on how many courts and judges there are, and then tell me how long that's going to take. So, dude, we live with this. There's no going back. We shut down the border tomorrow. We still have the people that have come in this year and the year before that and the year before that. So this is an issue. So what are the long-term effects on national security and the economy?
Well, I mean, I don't even think you're seeing long-term effects on national security. There's going to be short-term, near-term, now-term, whether we see them or not. I mean, it's happening, right? Malicious actors are coming across the border. That's the reality of it. And take apart, not even talk about the intel side of it. Just when you look at like we're talking about the drug crisis and fentanyl, that's happening right now. When you look at, here's what kills me with the border. And both of you guys are right. You hit it spot on. I have complete sympathy for the illegal immigrants that come across, and I do not blame them because I think it's what you're saying. They may have legitimate asylum claims and this and that. Dude, they're taking the path of least resistance. They know this works. They can get across. It's easy, right? It's the easy button. And I don't blame them for trying to come across. If I was one of them, I would come across. You would throw me back across the border, and I would come across again. And I would come across again. And I would keep coming across until I can finally stay here somewhere. I think this, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but a large part of this, and you touched on it with the labor force. It's like, man, look, lock the border down, expedite the process to come in, cut socials, cut tax ID numbers. Because I truly believe, and there's more to it, but I truly believe that, hey, look, you're going to come in a line and you're not going to be here for 4 years. Okay. You're going to be here for a couple of weeks, whatever. We're going to run a background check on you for the best that we can, which we know how that turns out if you're from Honduras. We're going to run a background check on you the best that we can. You know what? Let's fingerprint you because we got all these BATS databases out there everywhere that we're no longer using, right? So we can plug you right in there. Let's give you a tax ID number and say, hey, look, you can't vote. You're not an American citizen. Maybe you go down a path to where, like, it's been brought before, maybe 10 years of that or something like that. You get expedited, I don't know if you call it expedited, but, American citizen process. But hey, you come in, we give you a tax ID number. You can work and stay in the country. Okay. You don't have any benefits of a U.S. citizen other than being able to work here. But one, it'll allow us to track them. And I shouldn't say track, but just know, like, hey, the sheer volume that we're dealing with here, it's going to support our labor force. And then you don't have so many people trying to bring, 19 kids in their back across the Rio Grande. I mean, if you have some type of order, like you're saying, and it's expedited and it works, people will use that method because nobody wants to live here illegally. Right? Yeah, maybe that's what the 87,000 new IRS agents are for. Jesus, I haven't even got to that yet. I got to make my little, because I've got something about the IRS agents. This pisses me off. But that, to me, that is one of the biggest solutions that you can have, or best solutions is like, hey, just allow them to work. Because what's going to end up happening, it's going to be the Reagan years again, where you just grant amnesty. And it's funny because when we started doing this podcast at the very beginning, I remember they were arguing about, well, we could have somewhere between 12 and 15 and upwards of 18 million illegals here. And like you're just talking about with the 2 million, dude, we're going to be in the 30s. We're going to be in the 30 million illegal capacity. 10% of our population will be illegal immigrants. Of note, notice how the verbiage has changed. We talked about the war on words all the time. It used to be illegal aliens, then it went to undocumented persons. And then all of a sudden with Martha's Vineyard, they became migrants. Right. So it's, to me, the problem is a lot. It's a complicated issue. I think there are some very easy solutions or easier solutions that will at least get the ball moving in the right direction. But you know what? When have we done anything with immigration? And they're even talking about now that it's not even Title 42 anymore. Very few are being processed under that or turned away. It's now Title 8, which is our normal immigration, CFR or policy procedure. I mean, it's not going to get fixed. It's not going to fix in our lifetime. I don't care which political party. Republicans have had control. Democrats have had control. And you know what any of them have ever done about it? Nothing. I mean, at least with Trump, at least like, hey, maybe the wall works. Maybe it doesn't work. Hey, do something. And I think from the numbers we can see, and it wasn't just the wall, right? It was the wall. It was the agreements we had with Central American countries. But it's like he did something. And I can look at the numbers, man, and say, well, obviously what he did worked or had some impact. And I think that you need remain in Mexico policy. Absolutely. And I think that's where, because when you do the remain in Mexico policy, okay, it's exactly what DeSantis and Abbott are doing. Because when you're letting everybody in, nobody else feels the pain. Okay. You start shipping them to DC, you start shipping them to Martha's Vineyard, you start shipping them to Chicago, you start saying, oh, by the way, you got to stay in Mexico. Guess who else feels the pain? And so now no longer do you have just yourself fighting this. You have agreements with those other countries. You had the remain in Mexico policy, and then come up with this expedited process. Hey, let's cut you a tax ID number. Let's give you a background check, and you can come in and work. And then from there, you obviously have to figure something else out, right? You just can't just let them stay here forever like that. But you have to do something. And up until the Trump years, we haven't done anything. I'll throw it over to Josh, but I want to touch base real quick on the IRS agent because it's really only a one-liner. So, for the 87,000 IRS agents, it's going to cost the government roughly $10 billion annually to employ them. Okay. Because no, you shake your head. It's salary, benefits, taxes, this and that, right? It's going to cost them $10 billion. Yeah. I got you. Yeah. So it's going to cost roughly $10 billion. Again, you can throw $1 billion plus minus on that, whatever. And I'm going off the average salary of, so I'm using the average IRS salary of $60,000 a year, which from the training that I've seen with some of these guys and gals, they're going to be making more than $60,000 a year. Okay. Do you know how much the IRS is expected to recover according to their own bills by having the 87,000 IRS agents annually, $10 billion.
Jesus. We live in the dumbest of times. Truly. We truly do.
Dude, and that's being generous. That's being generous on the numbers.
We live in the dumbest of times. On the immigration thing, I'm with you. I'm the same way. If I lived in one of these, one of these Central South American countries, or any country that was absolutely terrible, and I was able, to planes, trains, and automobiles my way, into the United States to get a job and make some money to send back home to take care of my family, I would absolutely do it. All right, so I get that. I'm not completely heartless, but at the same time, like you know, we have to be picky about who we let in our door. I mean, we just have to. And I'm sorry, it's just people would say, "Well, that's cold, that's heartless, that's okay." Well, that's reality, right? And sometimes reality can be cold, and sometimes reality can be heartless. What we can't do is sink our ship, trying to save everyone, because you just can't do it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna throw out some numbers on what Texans, right? So Texas, this is what Texans pay every single year. This is out of the office of Bill Paxton, who is the Texas AG. This is off the Attorney General's website. This is what Texans are paying every year and this is for the year 2021. All right, to take care of illegal immigrants, 579 million and 717 million each year for public hospital districts to provide uncompensated care for illegal aliens, 152 million to house illegal criminal aliens for 1 year, 62 million and 90 million to include illegal aliens in the state emergency Medicaid program, more than 1 million to include them and provide services from the family violence program, 30 million and 38 million per year on perinatal coverage for illegal aliens through the Children's Health Insurance Program, and 31 million to 63 million to educate unaccompanied alien children each year. That's what Texans paid in 2021 for illegal aliens. Now, you talk about, include the other states in that. And that's not all what, Texans, obviously, they receive federal funding, some federal funding for some of this stuff. So it's not just Texans paying into that. It's everybody. It's US taxpayers are paying into that. Meanwhile, we have, like Roger pointed out earlier, meanwhile, we have, military members being told to go on food stamps because they can't cover the costs because of you know, poor policies, that have created inflation. Um, we can't take care of homeless veterans because, well, the funds just aren't there, but yet we can take care of millions of illegal aliens who, come in the country. It just, it's not right. I don't care how you cut it. We cannot sustain this. Our two biggest drivers of cost in this country are what? Medicaid and Social Security. All right. We're $30 trillion in debt, and we're just going to keep spending, we're going to keep raising taxes to take care of people who continuously come, who, aren't all accounted for. I forget the name. But, the Border Patrol just arrested somebody who had already been, convicted for murder in Miami and deported. And they caught him coming illegally back across the border. He tried to make an asylum claim. Right, that's who's coming. That's part of the folks coming into this country illegally. If you want to come in, you show up at a port of entry, you declare yourself. People like to, AOC and others like to invoke, Ellis Island and the Irish and everybody who came over. Yeah, well, I can go right now and pull the ship's manifest of where my ancestors came over. They showed up to a port of entry. They were screened, medically screened. They were given their name, and in some instances, they changed they were given a new last name. They had to drop an E or, whatever, right? And then they were sent off with nothing in their pocket. And, basically, it was like, you're going to figure it out, right? That's a whole lot different than me coming across a border illegally, you know, and disappearing, north of I-10. It's not sustainable if we want to remain a nation. It's not. You have a lock on your door and you have walls in your house for a effing reason. You don't leave your front door unlocked when you go to bed at night. But yet we do as a country, which is absolutely insane to me. It's absolutely insane. So that's what I got to say on that. I'll throw it over to Luke.
It'd be nice if they were if it was a transparent thing, right? If this was just transparent, it's like, hey, you know what? We're just gonna open the border, and you're gonna wait in line, and we're gonna process you and just send you out. If they were transparent about that, it's like, well, at least they're being transparent, and we can have a legitimate argument about how many people we should be letting in, so on and so forth. But they're not being transparent, and a lot of people are just, the Martha's Vineyard type people. And I'd say 99% of people are like, well, we'll take care of them because, that's what we pay our taxes for. My taxes will take care of that. Like the Texas residents, who pay those millions and millions of dollars that Josh was talking about just a second. It's like, that's all good. My taxes take care of that. I feel good because I support the policies that allow services like that. I'm okay with it. And I'm a good person because I pay my taxes, and I'm all for that. But there's no true sense of ownership with it. Nothing. None of these people who are bleeding hearts would volunteer a day's worth of their time to, go to an NGO down at the border who provides these services that Josh was talking about. They're not going to spend a day in their life. But here's the thing. There are a lot of volunteers that do, and good on them. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're volunteering. They really do care. But those are few and far between. The people down in Martha's Vineyard, they're not, like you were saying with Obama, nobody's going to open their house to them, which, by the way, I guarantee there are some racists on Martha's Vineyard who are not okay with the Obamas having a house there. I promise you that. And it's probably over 50% of them. Tell you what, man. This whole thing reminds me of the Martha's Vineyard, the vice president, and a few months ago when they dropped him off right in front of the Capitol. There was a migrant crisis in Europe in 2016, and it was a mass migration. They all came at the same time because of what was going on in Syria. Turkey just kind of let them go. And the saying was, and a lot of them, there were 500,000 people that passed through the tiny country of Slovenia. This is before I got there. And Slovenia snapped into, the Slovenians are like Austrians, they snapped into their very methodical way of doing things. They moved all 500,000 of those migrants in a very short order, and they recorded every one of them. It was scary how efficient they were at that. And the saying goes that 500,000, Slovenia is a country of 2 million people. Okay, it's not a big country. The saying is 500,000 migrants moved through Slovenia, and no one in the capital stopped stirring their cappuccino. And the point behind that saying was, if Austria and all the Austria, Italy, Hungary, if they closed their border with Slovenia and those 500,000 migrants were stuck in Slovenia, there would have been a humanitarian crisis the likes you've never seen before, because they just did not have the capacity to handle it. And that's how Martha's Vineyard is. That's how people on the damn suburbs of Chicago, rich white neighborhoods, oh wow, there's a crisis at the border, and they don't stop making the crustless PB&J for little Johnny. It just doesn't affect them. So yeah, ship them off, if they want to go to Chicago. But again, it's not going to solve anything, because these people, if they're Venezuelan, for instance, or if Cuban or whatever, they're going to a place where there's an insular community of the same nationality, someone who's already here. So I don't know. I don't know at what point this starts sinking in with Joe and Jane Sixpack living in Iowa. I don't know when that happens. That's why I wanted to ask about the long-term effects. Like, when are people actually going to start feeling it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So I don't know. It's a complex thing, and it's something we're going to be dealing with, like Roger said, in the near term and the long term.
So I want to bring up one other thing real quick we've been chatting about before we close this thing out. I guess we can go around the horn once, but I think I figured out the GOP's play. So coming up, and I guess for each of you, I'm kind of curious on how you're feeling about the House and the Senate with the midterm elections. So I'm pretty convinced we're going to take the House. I think the House is just a matter of how many seats. It's anything that's from 2 seats to 25, and I think on the high end you hear 33. I don't know. We get to the high end. I think we probably sit somewhere around the 15 mark or whatever. The Senate races are becoming much closer, and what we're starting to see on the Senate side of the House, and it's expected, right? You get to the midterms, the closer and closer you get to the election, the more it tightens up. But there's been a big money problem on the GOP side. And when you look at Blake Masters, and I think even with Oz, they're talking about there's some fundage drying up. And I'm just sitting here wondering, I'm just like, what is Mitch McConnell? And I know there's a disconnect between Rick Scott and McConnell. Philosophically, they have differences on the future of the GOP and what should be going on right now. But I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just like, man, what are they doing? Because in a lot of these races, and I say we're conservatives, the GOP, they're within earshot, in some places leading. I think in Georgia, we're starting to see Herschel Walker with some leading polls where they could actually take back the Senate. But Josh, I think I've come to this conclusion. Well, there's twofold to this. So one, they are willing to give up Georgia, which Georgia may actually go red. They're willing to give up Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona because the GOP believes that they can win Colorado, New Mexico, and New Hampshire. And just, I don't know anything about those state politics. Looking at straight polls, it looks like there's probably one seat that the GOP can pull out of all three of those. Maybe two. I'm not positive, but maybe one, maybe two. So my thought process is, and I've heard this kind of in the rumor mill, that they just want to swap those three out for the other three. And then maybe you'll get a mixed bag somewhere where something Arizona actually goes for Blake Masters as opposed to Mark Kelly again. But then kind of reality set in, and I want to get your thought on this. I think Mitch McConnell knows we're going to take the House. But the GOP establishment hates not only Trump, but the entire Trump movement so much that they're willing to give up the Senate in the midterms. I'm actually convinced of that now because they know that if the House is controlled by the Republicans, you can lock up the government. Okay. You're going into the last 2 years of a failed presidency. The House, obviously has to pass the bills for it to go forward or for it to finally be, for the president to finally sign off on it. So they can freeze and stall legislative action. There's not a whole lot you can do if you don't have both the House and the Senate, unless it's something that's truly going to be bipartisan. So I am convinced that Mitch McConnell is absolutely happy with the Republicans taking the House, keeping a tie in the Senate, maybe even giving up a seat in the Senate, knowing that we can tie up legislative action for the next 2 years, lame duck president, and in hopes that he kills the Trump movement. That's what I think their playbook is. So I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Anywhere close?
I think it's pretty bold of you to think that the GOP has a plan.
That's true. Good point.
I was reading this morning because I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning for absolutely no reason other than I couldn't go to sleep, and it was reading to where I forget which poll it was, but basically it's moved the the opinion on whether the GOP is going to take back the House or not to like 1 point, to where it's like people are like, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't now. Again, because the GOP continues to fail, to present clear policies, and synchronize the effort across the country. Lindsey Graham coming out saying that the GOP is going to introduce legislation to make abortion illegal after 15 weeks federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. It's like,
what was he
are
thinking?
you doing?
What the hell was he
don't
thinking?
know. I don't know. And it's like, dude, the Supreme Court literally came out and said the federal government has absolutely no say in that. And that's what a lot of people supported. It's like, absolutely, yes. Like, it was congressional overreach, or not congressional overreach. It was overreach, on Roe v. Wade. And it was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And now, that alone right there And again, I don't know, what the thought process was behind that, but it was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you know, it's just they're a mess. It's a mess. We don't have time to get into the whole thing, but it's just one of many reasons why I'm kind of done with the GOP by and large. The Pennsylvania race with Oz and Fetterman is a hot mess. Fetterman has John McCain's cheek growing on the back of his neck. I don't know what's going on with that. Um, after his stroke, that's just an absolute mess. Oz is putting out some terrible commercials. Um, I don't know. I don't know, man. We'll just have to see, because I wouldn't bank on the GOP taking the House, or the Senate at this point. I don't have faith in them to win. I really don't. So
We'll see how that shakes out. If they were smart, they'd already be playing on this border thing. But I don't see that happening, and I just wonder why. Why, guys? It's just I think that McConnell thinks he has a plan, but whatever. I'm like Josh. I'm done with it. I do think we'll take the House, the Senate. I don't know, man. We'll see. There's some races no one's talking about. Roger sent that text the other day, and about Nevada in particular. I was like, I didn't know that. And so I started looking into it. I'm like, wow, that's a vulnerable thing. Everybody's attention is focused on Herschel Walker and Mehmet Oz down up there in Pennsylvania. So, who knows? We'll see about the Senate, but I do believe we'll take the House. I just want to give a quick shout out to my boy James. Yeah,
Wow,
love it.
very
Thank you,
nice.
James. It's really nice. And Josh was kind enough to send it. It was wrapped up like a nuclear weapon or something, or like biohazard. That thing was packed in there good. Nothing was going to break. It's a U.S. Special Operations Command mug. That's going to go in a place of honor. Don't even want to put coffee in it. It's good enough for some good bourbon, though, I think. I was kind of hoping that when Josh sent me that, it would be some bourbon samples. I was really excited about that. I opened it up, and there was a nice jacket in there. And look at that. Is that Old Soul? Nice. So, Josh sent me a really nice jacket, extra medium, just like I like them. And he just didn't wear them anymore. I'm getting Josh's hand-me-downs. That's the level I'm at now. It's like, you gonna throw that away? Send it my way. With that half a cheeseburger you didn't eat. And congratulations to Josh's daughter too, man. We want to give a quick second on that, Josh?
Yeah, so our middle daughter, she's she's 15. She has stated, she wants to make her own money, and she wants to work, and so she just started working for the Lord's Chicken. Um, being that is the number one chicken place in the United States, and far beats Popeyes. But you're really proud, especially 15 years old. I remember I was 15 years old. I don't think I really wanted to work, but she wanted to get out there and get after it. So she's now employed. I can't wait for her to get her first paycheck though, and see the taxes.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna go take that box of Lipton tea, and we're gonna go throw it in the pond behind our house.
Nice.
Yeah.
You get any free chicken out of that at all?
Not yet, but I'm gonna get some free cookies, man. Chick-fil-A got the bomb cookies.
Okay. Well, I was hoping. I bet they've cracked down on that back in the day. Our boy Scott used to work at Chick-fil-A, and he'd bring us all the leftover chicken breasts that weren't eaten at the end of the day. Buddy, we didn't know how good we had it back then. But yeah, congratulations to her. She's really going to learn a lot. That's not just Roger's upset she didn't go to work for Popeyes. But man, Chick-fil-A's got a system down, and she's going to be able to see that. And I think that's a really great first job to have, because man, their system works. Tell you what. So thanks to James, thanks to Carlton Zeus for the great intro music. Visit us at culperscanteencup.com. Visit him at carltonzeus.com. And we appreciate it. He's still letting us. We're trying to angle to get him on for episode 100. This was, in case you didn't know, Culper's Canteen Cup, episode 98. So if you've just been listening to us, didn't realize what you were listening to, we did a cold open. So I hope you all enjoyed that. But until next time, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured.